So you've written the perfect script for your solo podcast and you're pressing record now. You're reading and you sound like you're reading. News anchors use a teleprompter all the time and they sound really natural when they read. Maybe that's some kind of what the hell kind of moment. Figuring out how to deliver your podcast script into the mic or onto a camera is one of the hurdles for sounding like an expert about something or representing your company while also sounding human and not like somebody reading a book. And sounding human is a great way to stand out these days with all the generative AI out there. So you've done the work. You've written the script, but your delivery isn't what you want it to be. So I'm going to tell you about 4 different techniques that you can use to fix that kind of flatness that you might be hearing in your episode. And this is going to range from reading a full script to just reading some notes to something that's in between those things. And these are the things that I actually use or I've used in the past for my own solo podcasting. Hi, I'm Jen DeHaan, and part of producing a solo hosted podcast like these ones that I'm making here at Stereo Forest is being your own performance coach. You're on your own in your bedroom or your office or wherever you're filming or recording your podcast. So you need to coach yourself by recording and then watching the playback during your edit process. And then you need to make plans for changing, or you need to make plans to get feedback on what the output is like. And that's all good. But a good performance, it starts with the way that you form your script and the overall structure of the show and the method that you actually use to read that script. And the goal here is really to just reference a script in real time as you're recording the episode itself. And the techniques in this episode are going to help you do that, hopefully fairly efficiently. And before I get to the very first method, I need to talk about the trade-offs that you're going to experience and why. It's because choosing the right technique for your own solo show out of the 4 that I'm about to talk about, it depends on understanding what you're balancing, and that's so you can make the best decision for you. You want to consider your delivery because you're considering that sort of perception of your audience and how natural your voice comes across like. You want people to actually feel that you are just speaking off the cuff entirely, the whole thing from memory, sharing information with them like you're an expert, right? Or a friend, depending on what you want to achieve with your solo show. Now, how much you're reading versus performing will be that trade-off. And you're trading off how many errors you make and then need to edit in the post-production process. It can affect the cognitive load that you carry, having to think about what words you're going to say, which words you're actually going to use specifically, or how to handle your energy, amp it up or calm it down. And all of this is that trade-off because it's how natural your audience thinks that you're speaking, how natural to you. And say the more errors you make or the more rambling or repetitions added, the more editing you're going to have to do. And all of that is time and money. So method 1, the first thing you can do is just kind of a safe entry point. So this method involves looking down at your script. You absorb one sentence at a time, and then you look up at your camera or your microphone and deliver that sentence from your short-term memory. So you don't have the paper in front of you at that point. And then you're just going to repeat this over and over again. Now, this can help with a really natural conversational feel because you're not actively reading the text. You're doing it before you record, or you're chopping that part out of the recording. But of course, this is extremely slow. And depending on how often you reference your notes, you can also possibly kind of lose that flow of a natural paragraph or passage of text. And it's also quite difficult to edit together these sort of videos seamlessly or make them look good. You can notice a lot of people, for example, on TikTok doing this. And the fact that you notice it is probably not what you want for a long form YouTube video. It also puts a really high load on your working memory, and this is really tiring. And then if it's tiring, you can end up with more errors in it too. So this is really best for very short videos or content or very short podcasts. So you're probably going to be using this more for your shorts or reels for marketing your podcast instead. So the next method is one where you're just kind of scan reading it. So this one requires a prompter if you're doing a video podcast, or it requires very strategic positioning of your script versus the camera because you are actually reading the script, kind of like that news anchor. So your eyes are always scanning 1 or 2 words ahead of what your mouth is saying, and you're actively processing the next phrase while speaking the current one. The pro of this one is it's extremely efficient, especially if you are doing a video podcast with the teleprompter. It's very easy if you're doing an audio-only podcast because you don't have to worry about that at all. You're just reading your text, scanning it ahead. But this, as such, is going to take practice. It's easy in this sort of method also to kind of sound low energy or kind of robotic until you're comfortable doing this because it's a skill that you're learning. And with that practice, those reps, this method of reading and performing becomes second nature. After you get used to it, you're not even going to notice yourself doing it. And you also might want to try different text size settings and whatever you're reading, see if that makes it easier, and also analyze your eye movements if you're making a video podcast so you can kind of minimize the look of actually reading, doing that scanning of the text. Now, the next method is referencing cues that you make for yourself. This is often kind of the next step after doing that news anchor style read, a very optional next step. You don't even have to stop doing the scan reading. But this one uses the script formatting from another episode, which I'll link in the show notes. But essentially, from that episode, you are putting some words in boldface or italics or notes in square brackets and using ample spacing to make those words very easy to read quickly while you're just scanning what you're referencing. So your eyes are only glancing at the script or the teleprompter to find this next reference cue in the text that you have up there. I have reference cue right there in italics. This might be a highlighted word, a phrase, or maybe a short phrase on its own line that you're just scanning and then you're talking about in your own words. Your only job is to look at the camera and just deliver that passage. You probably already remember it with the right emotion or cadence or delivery because you know what that means to you. So then you just talk about it based off that phrase. Now, your brain will naturally fill in the rest for you because you generally already know what you want to say because this is your script. Now, your notes around that can be as detailed or as sparse as you need or want them to be. So why this works is it combines that naturalness from the first technique of just memorizing the whole sentence to the efficiency of just reading your script or notes. So this one works really well for long form episodes. And I'll generally do 2 read-throughs of all of my episodes that I write. And the second read is often a lot better because I've already kind of gone through and I don't have to reference my notes as much at all because you already probably know the script so well from planning the episode itself. That read-through or scan-through in this case, it kind of just cleans up your natural wording off the references. You figure out a better way to say it because you just said it, a few minutes ago. And then you can kind of improvise better off of the notes that you've made. The science behind this is that you're using cue words or what's also called retrieval cues for something that's called anchoring in the science, or anchor words, they're also called. And these are just like memory anchors for each section of this script or the plan that you're delivering. And your brain is filling in the rest of the concept or the gist with that anchor word, which is the trigger. And you've been doing this for a lot of your life. It's just what humans do. So you can start relying on this cued thought just kicking in for you, especially with a lot of practice. And I'll put some links in the description if you want to read more about this concept. And you don't necessarily need a prompter for this method. If you're doing video podcasts, you can use a device or paper with sufficient notes or highlighted words. You can use a prompter and go mostly off of memory, even though it's right there in front of you. And it's really easy to edit out silent sections, like those moments that you're just looking for a word, maybe forming your thought and saying the paragraph, because software will do that fairly automated for you. It's just a few clicks, and then you can remove all of those empty gaps. And you can even fine tune to remove the sections in a very particular way. Now, the next method, method 4, is just reference and then improvise. Now, this is another method that I use, or I sometimes added on to the previous technique that I just discussed. This is where you give yourself permission to just improvise at certain points. Now, if you think of it like a new point on the spot while you're going through your episode, you just add it right there. But what you're practicing here and getting reps in is just keeping it short. And this is to keep those guardrails in place for not rambling. You'll probably find yourself doing this to a certain extent anyways, naturally, just putting your own guardrails on. The more comfortable you get in front of the camera and the more times you edit, you know the pain that you're just putting there for yourself. You know that I'm going to have to edit this a lot if I don't rein it in. So all of this means is that you're going off script essentially with additional bullet points, or perhaps like a short story if you remember something while you're recording. And to practice this, start with things you know really well and practice saying them in the most efficient way you can. And if you don't think you got it right, pause and then do that section again, a second take. And keep the one that you like the most. And you'll find that as you practice this more and more, you'll get better at wording in general, reducing those filler words, and so on. And soon enough, you aren't going to need a second or a third take at all. And the reason this works is it combines all of the techniques and adds the unscripted you into the mix. And this is the most natural sounding way that you can speak in an episode. Those surprise stories or natural tangents make your video human, is what we do in real life. And anything that doesn't fit just gets cut out in the edit. But some of the best parts of my shows come from these improvised moments. And this is ideal for long form. You get a little break in there perhaps, but you should probably get comfortable with the previous technique, adding just notes and not improvising too much first before you try this one. So which one should you use? So what I find in general is the right form to pick for a show really depends on the day, your energy, what's going on, and how much your brain tends to retain scripts or notes that you're using. And it also depends a lot on your own brain and how you remember things and your confidence. But what if your brand's voice is just more spontaneous than all of this? What if that full script just kind of feels like a trap or something, like it's holding you, reining you in, and you don't have the freedom? Now, there's a professional, real business solution for that too. And in the next episode, I'm going to show you how I form those bullet points to work with that professional workflow. And I'll be back soon for the next episode, so make sure you're subscribed and you get that. And you can learn more about this show and you can get in touch with me at stereoforest.com. Bye for now.